The video is Lila Nishmas Ushmo Bach and Chaim Tzidoy and Ufur Shlema Deracham Chaya Fruma Bas Paramei Malka. Everyone should have in mind, of course, for the Talmud Chacham in Muncie, Chmana Litzlan, that was stabbed yesterday and he's in critical condition. His name is Mordechai ben Bracha, Shavfor Shalema. I think the first thing that we always have to remind ourselves and remember what the Shulchan Aruch says and the Rambam says and the Gemara says, that when something happens and something like that, so of course there's a level of ishtadus, so people speak about maybe we should be trained and be walking around with guns and swords, and that's called the second line of defense. The first line of defense is what the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch say is to do tshuva. Klal Yisrael are one. If something happens, and especially if it's close to home to people who live in Muncie, that means we have to be mischazik more. What should we do? Anything. Any person has to take personalized what they know that they could be mischazik more. In Eretz Yisrael especially, what's going on in Israel. So that already the rabbis in Chutz La'aretz already wrote a letter. And we heard from the chief rabbi, and it's something that we're lucky that right now we're doing is we're being mischazik in Shmir Shabbos, which just seems to be the core, I would say one of the core arguments, and I guess the applications of this vicious battle that's going on between brothers. So you could call them the Erev Rav, and people have many spins on what is and what's going to happen. At the end of the day, when there's a machlekes in Klal Yisrael, it's terrible, and especially when there's Chil Shabbos and when there's such negativity. So what we can do is bring light. If there's so much darkness, you remove darkness. And the greatest light, one of the greatest lights that we can bring into the world is discussing Shabbos, because Shabbos represents the Geula, represents Yimois HaMashiach, and that's what we want so much. So we're holding in the Sugi of Shabbos, and in Maaseh Shabbos, interesting that's also what they were talking about. Unfortunately, the topic that we're speaking about is Mamash Halacha Maaseh, is what's going on, is Jews that are doing work on Shabbos, what's the status? And I think, the expression is Lulei Divrei of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Lo Matzanu Yadeinu Ragleinu, which means without Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was such an oyev Yisrael, such a love of Israel, and he wrote and said, and there's a lot of things quoted by him, that he really saves the day. Otherwise, there would be a lot of difficult questions when it comes to Chil Shabbos. We mentioned electricity on Shabbos. The use of electricity on Shabbos is really based on Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. And we have a few other interesting questions. I think we left off with a question. We discussed a little bit about the camera and the pictures, and there's another, and then there's another sugya, which we're still trying to figure out. If someone could give pshat on this, the expression is, I'll take his clothing to the bathhouse. That's what the Gemara says. If someone wants, when they wanted to show an expression of achna, so I'll tell you where we're a little bit stuck in our shir. And this is something also that the Rabbanim, the group of the Rabbanim that are giving this shir in other places, are a little bit stuck. Tell you what we're stuck with. So let's discuss of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's other heter. What happens the following, and this could be quite a common occurrence. Someone invites another Jew that's not religious over for Friday night meal. So you tell them maybe to come also earlier, you have a place for them to sleep, or you have the heter, you want to mekarv them and bring them closer to Hashem. Beautiful. So what happens? They drive, and they bring delicious dessert. They bought it before Shabbos, they even bought it on Shabbos, they bought the great dessert. And you're thinking, wait a minute, this person drove on Shabbos. Am I allowed to eat this item on Shabbos? So, not everyone agrees. In fact, perhaps most poskim would say no. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says, no, it's permitted. Why is it permitted? She says, he says, because there's a penalty for a Jew that does a malacha on Shabbos b'mezid, meaning he purposely does a malacha on Shabbos. You're not allowed to have enjoyment. Everyone agrees you're not allowed to have enjoyment of that item on Shabbos. Maybe after Shabbos you're allowed to. Unless you say that the Jew is considered a shogeg. Shogeg means that really his intention is not a real intention, and which is something definitely plausible. But let's assume that that's a problem. Here it's a problem because his intention is, and especially if someone that knows Shabbos, was once keeping Shabbos, not simple. What's the heter? Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says, mutter, you could have the dessert. Why are you allowed to have the dessert? He says, because the malacha that was done is not in the creation of this item, meaning no one baked delicious cookies These cookies were bought in the store before Shabbos, let's say, or even on Shabbos, because there's ways of buying it on Shabbos too, without making any payment. So the melacha, the work wasn't done with the item itself. The work that was done, the melacha that was done, was driving. And says Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, if anything, we would prefer that he wouldn't drive. We would have preferred that he walks. So therefore he calls this, basically what this is called hanot studies, indirect enjoyment. And therefore he says it's permitted. So now there's another case that we need to discuss. The case is someone brought a key across, let's say, Ocean Parkway. This happened, Moshe Feinstein discussed this case. Someone brought a key on Shabbos to open a locked shul. Are you allowed to use the key? And number two, are you allowed to enter into the shul? To be continued.